back of an SUV is not where you expect to meet resentment. But there I am. I'm 3 weeks postpartum. My back is absolutely burning because it aches so bad. And my husband and mother-in-law are up front, laughing. And the thing is I volunteered to be here. I literally climbed in first and I smiled. And somehow, I am furious at both of them. I wasn't dying, but I was seething quietly, the way you do when you can't actually say the thing you're feeling because you're the one who made the choice. And then I felt guilty for feeling it because I'm a therapist, because I'm a Christian, really because I chose it. And friend, if you've ever made a decision from guilt and then found yourself quietly blaming the people around you for it, this video is for you. Before we go any further, I'm Jennifer. I'm a licensed Christian therapist and I work with women, mostly moms, who love God and are struggling in ways they don't quite have words for yet. And today we're talking about resentment. Here's what I was taught growing up, and maybe you were too, that it is my job to sacrifice. That's what I'm supposed to do as a Christian, as a woman, as a mother. And if I don't do that, I start to feel guilty. And I feel like a bad Christian. I feel like a selfish mom, a selfish daughter. So to avoid feeling like a bad and selfish person, I make decisions sometimes that I regret almost instantly. And then something interesting happens. I start to feel like a victim. I feel trapped between feeling like a bad person if I don't do what I think everyone expects and doing something I actually have a right heart to do. And friends, that's when the anger starts to creep in. Because I made a decision based in guilt instead of love. And then my brain goes looking for someone to blame. Listen, resentment isn't just a bad attitude. It's not just proof that you need more sleep. It's actually data. It's telling you something about the story you're telling yourself. And we need to look at that story carefully. Because here's what I know. You are not a bad person for feeling this. But we do need to talk about where it's actually coming from. Let me give you a few signs that resentment has moved in. You say yes, but there's fury building quietly behind it. You track what everyone takes and what no one gives back. You fantasize about being alone, not because you don't love them, but because the weight of it all feels suffocating to you. Church feels like another obligation instead of a refuge. You snap at the person who needed the smallest thing because they were the last thing. And then you feel guilty for any of this, and that guilt makes the resentment worse. If that's you, I need you to hear me. This isn't necessarily evidence that you're a terrible person or a bad Christian or a failure as a mom, but it is evidence that something in your thinking has gotten twisted. And that really matters because what we think shapes everything about how we feel and what we do. The good news, twisted thinking can be untwisted. And you guys, that is literally my job. And that is exactly what we're going to do. So let's talk about what's actually happening underneath resentment, because this is the part that nobody tells you. You guys, what I was doing in the SUV wasn't sacrifice, it was guilt. And as a Christian who has been bought and paid for with the blood of Jesus Christ, it is not God's will that we pretend to sacrifice out of love, while in reality, we are acting like we are in bondage to guilt. Like we're bad people if others don't see us acting a certain way. In my work as a Christian therapist, we have a term for this kind of thinking. It's called a cognitive distortion. when the way we're thinking about something is literally causing our own pain, not the situation itself, our thinking about it. When I was sitting in the back of that SUV, I was seething because I was telling myself a story. My husband and my mother-in-law were up front having a grand old time at my expense, even though I was the one who had just had a baby. And I started thinking about how selfish they were for not coming up with a better plan. Do you hear that word, should? Someone should have figured this out. He should have known. She should have offered. This is one of the cognitive distortions we see over and over again in resentment. They're called should statements. We use should to create a standard no one agreed to, and then we feel wronged when they don't meet it. But there's a second distortion running at the same time. You guys, I just felt unseen. Therefore, I was being ignored. I felt used. Therefore, I was being used. This one is called emotional reasoning, and it sounds like my feelings are proof of what's true. Neither of those things was the truth. And when we operate outside of the truth, we suffer. If you're with me right now, I want you to know that's not an accident. You came to this video for a reason. Subscribe so I can keep showing up in your feed, because what I'm about to share next is where this actually starts to shift, and you don't want to miss it. Okay, here's what I want you to do with this. First, name what actually happened. Say it out loud, like literally out loud. I made a decision to avoid feeling guilty. It wasn't driven by love. That's why I'm angry right now, and nobody actually wronged me. This sentence is harder than it sounds because it takes the blame off someone else and puts the responsibility back where it belongs, with you. That's not to shame you. That's actually freedom. Because if the problem is their behavior, you're stuck waiting for them to change. But if the problem is your thinking, you can actually work with that. Second, challenge the distortion. When you catch a should statement, like he should have known, she should have offered, stop and ask yourself, where did that rule come from? Did someone actually agree to it? When you catch emotional reasoning, I feel used, so I must be being used, ask, what is the actual evidence? What else could be true? This is called cognitive reframing, and I want you to understand something. This is not just a therapy technique. This is choosing to operate in truth. Cognitive distortions are, by definition, operating outside of truth. And as believers, we are called to something different. Romans 12:2 tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. 2 Corinthians 5:21 tells us we have been made the righteousness of Christ. 1 Corinthians 6:20, you were bought with a price. You do not have to make decisions out of a fear of feeling guilty. And you don't need to. You really shouldn't. This is not what the blood of Jesus purchased for you. When you give from love, even when it costs something, it doesn't hollow you out the same way. The difference isn't always the action, it's what's underneath it. Here's what happened on the ride home. I was angry for most of it, to be honest, and I'm not going to pretend like it just evaporated. But at some point, I got honest with myself. I had to sit with the uncomfortable truth that nobody put me in the back seat. I climbed in willingly, and the story I was telling about why was making me miserable. That night, I actually confessed to a friend, not my family, a friend, what had actually happened. And I said out loud, hey, I made a decision from guilt, and then I blamed people who didn't do anything wrong. And that small act, naming the truth, repenting of the distorted thinking, that's what started to soften it. Later, I also talked to my husband, not about what he did wrong, but about what we needed to do differently next time. Here's what I want you to carry out of this video. You don't have to stay in the story your feelings wrote for you. You are made for truth, and the truth can literally set you free, your mind and your emotions. If this helped you, subscribe. There's more where this came from, and I'll see you in the next one.